Hey guys! Yeah, wow, that's a nice case. We just got through watching Batman: The Dark Knight Returns Part 2. And in other news, new comic pickups, new Action 52, Justice League, DC, New 52 stuff. So
yes.
Maybe we'll talk about those later. Maybe. Anyway, what did you think of the movie?
I'm going through my comic book collection.
What do you care?
Well, this is what, gonna be non-spoilers first, then spoilers. How do we do this?
Oh yeah, I forgot.
Yeah,
that's how we do things.
That's how we do things. Yeah.
Okay, first non-spoilers.
Okay.
If you like comic book, if you like comic-y Adam West Batman, preferably you like that more than you do like dark stories, you probably won't like this one. If you like really dark, down to earth, well, I won't say down to earth. I mean, there is some really ludicrous stuff in there.
Yeah.
If you like darker stories that are heavy hitters and like really nail you home, you're probably gonna like this one. In fact, I will go out of my way to say that this is the darkest Batman film.
This is one of the darkest comic book based movies I've ever seen.
Well, that's really dark. Like, whew.
This is a movie I've been actually waiting for when I heard they were doing Dark Knight Returns, because I knew it was based on the Frank Miller novel. As much as I liked Part 1, I was really looking forward to Part 2 because
well, that's when all the stuff happened.
Yeah, that's where the Joker's involved, and that's when Superman is involved.
Oh, excuse me. Sorry guys, I've had quite a week.
Well, all in all, the animation was very good, I thought.
Well, if you saw the first one,
yeah,
it's no different. It's
it has that style.
It's the same studio.
Mm-hmm. What do you think of the story itself?
The story I thought was a lot better. The sequel was a lot better, but then again, so was the book. The second half of the book was.
You said something during when we were watching this, and you said, "Man, this is a lot to take in."
It was, because a lot was happening too fast.
I think this movie really shocked you too.
Yeah, because it went places that you really don't see superhero movies, or a lot of movies really go.
Right.
Even in general, there's a lot of movies that do very edgy and very dark stuff. Not so much as the cursing or anything like that, but they can go places and do things that really kind of are just like, oh my gosh, they actually did that? They went there?
Oh, by the way, let you know something too. In this movie, there was no cursing. No cursing at all. Ninja Theory. Take notes. You don't need to curse a lot to have a very dark and adult and mature, tell a mature story.
I'll hold you on that one, because I'm sure I've heard at least the cop say, get that son of a...
Well, yeah, but you know what I mean. Not pro level, where it's all over the place, where like every other word is an F word, or every other word is an H word. You're right, there were a couple. There were, the female commissioner was about to say asshole, and then Batman punched her in the face. Watch your language.
But yeah, what I mean by edgy is this particular movie really went places that I didn't think that they would go. Not particularly with Batman or with any superhero movie, but it really, yeah, even more surprising, it went there with that. But like in movies in general today, it's really rare to see them go as far as they do when they take that sort of edginess. I'll save the spoilers for the later part of the film, but if you really want to see how far that they can go, and like not just with what happens in the movie, but like with the references, with the culture, with the different countries, and how they're not actually making up, how they'll one spoiler, like they do use the swastikas in the German thing, so that's just one heads up, that they go out there and they do things with real life people from around the world.
In real life situations.
Yeah, and they bring in some historical real people.
What I also enjoyed about this film, Will, is that it was very much a period piece, if you stop and think about it. This was This is very much a Cold War movie.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. Because, like I said, the book was written
during the Cold War.
Yeah, during the 80s, and it brings in all those, elements into it.
So, yeah, all I can say is I really liked the film, and I'll tell you why. So, I'm giving you guys the go-ahead. I would honestly watch this one, but only if you're are capable of handling that sort of dark tone, because
this is not a kids movie.
No.
I was thinking something a moment ago, and I wanted to ask you something. Would they have gotten away with this if this was a live action film? And I would say no. Or at least it'd be rated R, because there were things that I know that little kid, the moms and the little kids would come to see the Batman movie, and they would see the same stuff going on, and they'd be like, "What the hell is this?"
That's the weird thing, though. It's because in some form in animation, it seems like in animation that's the only way they would get away with it.
And they tell these type of stories.
But
right.
you can't really do that to a real life culture in reality.
Unless you were trying to go for a rated R.
Unless that was your
Watchmen or something like that.
Yeah, unless that was your purpose.
Right.
And you actually had meaning behind it. This one does. But oh wow, it's hard to talk about it too because it's such a rare occurrence that happens that
it's a comic book film.
It's a comic book film the way it should, like telling you the comic stories. Mm-hmm. And this is what is really hard for any animated series to do, is to be really faithful to their source material. They'll be as faithful as they can be, but when it comes to how serious that these books and their stories really are, they can't really port that over too well without sugarcoating it for the kiddies.
Right.
Because you got to remember, back in the day, like when Superman was in his prime, these comic book stories were picked up by war veterans, and people during these wars would read these stories because Superman was like a hero for them to look up to. And there's documentaries you can find on this stuff. So Superman, all intents purposes, although loved by children, the stories were pretty deep. So it's cool that they actually have it. Sorry, it's cool that they have an animated movie here that just shows just how deep that these stories were, and maybe people can start to take the comic books a little bit more, or get interested into the comic books more.
Well, the man who made the book that this movie's based on, Frank Miller, who's one of my favorite writers, he made a great statement once that I totally agree with, is that a lot of times in comic books, a lot of precious ink and time and manpower has been wasted trying to find a child audience that just isn't there. Meaning that most comic books aren't meant for children. They're meant for mature teenagers or mature audiences.
You're right.
A lot of times they deal with, there's the fantastic part and the silly part. There's people in capes and flying around. But,
and there are comics for that.
Yeah, and there are comics for children. But
there's even comic. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
But there are even comics that are specifically designed for adults, and I mean literally for adults. Like you go to a comic book store, like probably a big one. Like we have a Heroes comic book store. They have a comic book section that is closed off for younger audiences, and only adults are able to go back there and see those comics because those are. And so, unfortunately, what has hurt comics was during the mid-1900s.
50s.
Yeah, the 50s, when the whole conspiracy was like, oh, these things are bad for you, these things ruin your mind, these things do all that bullshit that really doesn't happen, but we need something to blame.
And then came Frank Miller in the 80s and just blew the whole scene wide open with Batman, with his work on Daredevil with Marvel. Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, so he just took it to places and really told these really interesting stories. Disguised or like sugarcoated as a comic book, as a comic book.
Yeah, as far as the animation goes, it's still the good animation. It's really good animation. It's not like Batman. Batman.
It's better than Superman.
Superman versus Superman. Yeah. It's not. It's way better than that, but still, it's not the best animation I've ever seen. I have seen of course, when it comes to the best animation you've ever seen, unfortunately, you kind of really got to go to Miyazaki in Japan.
This movie is only about an hour and 15 minutes long, if that much.
It feels longer.
It feels longer because
than that.
So much stuff is happening.
I felt like I was watching a Lord of the Rings movie, or better yet, what I think it is that the movie was so serious that it makes you feel like you know how it is when you're in a courtroom and you're sitting there listening to the trial and the judge and like all the factual stuff that's going on. It feels longer because it's important and it's business. It's not so much fun. And when time flies when you're having fun. This is how this pretty much was. Although it was fun because it's Batman. It still is. It's your superhero. But it's such a serious story that it feels like a Peter Jackson film.
Right.
So in short, if you're ready for that kind of film, by all means, go and check it out. It's right here. Here's the cover of it, just in case you forget the title. Batman Returns of the Dark Knight Part 2. Go see the first one. In fact, it'd probably be a good idea if you did.
Right. Well, it kind of feels like one big movie. The first
it
part
is.
and 2 part. Yeah, just one big.
I was kind of curious, could they do a third part? Could they?
Actually, they could, because Frank Miller did make a sequel.
Do we want one?
well, in that one, Superman and Wonder Woman have sex. Sky sex.
I say yes.
That's it.
Take that as a yes.
There it is.
So anyway, ends the non-spoiler part of Dark Knight Returns Part 2. Join us in the heavy spoilers version, where we basically talk about the entire story.
We go knee deep into the story.
Oh yeah, and explain our interactions and feelings and our shock and surprises.
Right.
So yeah, it should be great. But not before you see the movie, if you're interested. If you plan to see, or if you like spoilers and you like to see the movie, I'm sure just do whatever you want.
Right.
Okay. Anyway, later, guys.